Hello, my wonderful, beautiful friends, guys. Welcome back to our /IDontWorkHereLady, where entitled Karens truly believe that everyone on Earth will serve them. And in today's episode, a smug Karen thinks OP's a lowly delivery worker and berates them, only to find out that OP's her boss's boss, guys. So like 3 levels above her. But yeah, the stories today will leave you shaking your heads, so sit back, relax, and enjoy the ride. Let's dive in. Firstly, here's a little context. I live in an area that isn't a tourist town, but it has a lot of British and Asian expats. They'll often have family and friends visit, particularly over the holidays, so it's not uncommon to have a random visitor approach you to ask for directions or recommendations or something. It's also very close to a psych ward and a few care facilities, so it's also not uncommon to be approached by someone who's operating on a different level of reality than you personally are. This is why I was patient and I didn't tell them off to begin with. That said, this only just happened and I'm still laughing about it. It's my day off and I felt like getting some fresh air, so I picked up a couple of beers, a pack of cigarettes, my old Nintendo, and headed down to a national park. There's an actual park area of the park, and you know what I mean, with a playground and grass. About a 5 to 10 minute walk along the path through the bush, you get to a nice landing, which is where I'm heading. The landing looks out over the lake, and it's a lovely little spot. So I plonk myself down, light up my cigarette, crack a cold one, and start catching me some random Pokemon while admiring the view. After a while, I can see movement on the trail. 2 older women with Northern English accents approaching the landing. One says to the other something like, "Oh look, we finally found someone." They wave to me and start walking over. I'm always down to help, so I look up, give them a good day, and ask if they need anything. That's when one says to me, "So, there's a dead duck at the park." Now, I'll admit, I was caught off guard by that one, so I just paused and I wait for additional context about this weird statement. The silence gets awkward, so I take a sip of beer, start to turn back to my game, and I say, "Oh no, poor little fella." And this obviously wasn't the answer they're expecting. They just looked as confused as I feel. She then presses on and she says, "One of the kids down there could get sick from it." I just respond, "Yeah, that would be a shame. Nature is brutal sometimes, hey?" The woman just looks baffled. Her silent friend is just fidgeting awkwardly. And that's when she says to me, "Well, go get rid of it." I look up at this point, unable to suppress a bit of a laugh at the ridiculousness of this whole interaction. And I gesture to my beers and I say, I'm kind of busy right now. Call the city council if it bothers you." Hearing me say that, she looks almost offended and she says, "But we're on holiday. We shouldn't have to deal with stuff like that. If anybody should be calling the city council, it should be you." As if that means anything. I'm about done now, so I wave them away and I tell them, go have fun on their holiday, leave me alone. She then rolls her eyes and she does a big huff and says, "Unbelievable." I just tell her, enjoy your holiday. I hope you can find a park attendant who can deal with that for you. I've had a lot of awkward and weird interactions before, but I think this one takes the cake. Yeah, it's definitely not every day where you're forced to pick up a dead carcass by a stranger. And the way she acted, right? Unbelievable. A person who I don't even know won't clean up a dead animal for us. Once again, guys, the entitlement of some people never ceases to amaze me. So this happened a long time ago. I didn't think it was that big of a deal at the time, but looking back, it's really messed up. I'm an amateur paleontologist. This story begins on a Wednesday, when I was finally given the opportunity to purchase some fossils from Germany, an ichthyosaurus for those who are curious. It was in 3 pieces, being unprepared, containing ribs, vertebrae, teeth, and paddle bones. I was really excited at the time. Since I didn't have the proper tools, I went to a local museum where I knew nearly all the staff, and one of them offered to prepare the fossils, which was an amazing opportunity. I took the offer and I brought my fossils in and they were prepared. About 2 weeks later, I was asked to pick them up, so on lunch break, I head over to grab them. As I'm walking in, I can hear a kid crying, and I see this woman dragging her child around the museum. I didn't say anything. I head to the front desk where I see 3 amazing pieces covered in bubble wrap. I pick them up, and right about now, the woman makes her way towards us. She's asking if anyone's available to give a tour. Now, this place doesn't offer one, so I explain that this museum doesn't offer tours. The woman doesn't seem to understand, and she asks me if I can give a tour. I tell her I'm not an employee and I can't, so a little louder, she repeats the question. It's at this point I decided I wasn't going to humor her any further, and I just laugh and say, "I'm sorry, I can't give you a tour." I then collect the fossils and start to head out. I put 2 inside a bag and the 3rd bigger piece I was holding. Well, this woman grabs me in an attempt to get my attention, and since I wasn't expecting it, I nearly dropped the fossil. So of course, I raise my voice at her saying, "Hey, don't do that." And that was a big mistake. She was already worked up with her kid crying, so she takes it out on me. She starts screaming at me, half in English, half in her language, which was Serbian, I think. The woman gets so mad at one point that she grabs onto the fossil I was holding. She gets one side, but she wasn't expecting the weight, so she lets it go and it hits a corner of the desk. Thank goodness it was bubble wrapped. I just leave and continue walking. But what I didn't know is the lady was following me and she saw me heading into my workplace. About half an hour or so later, she comes in without her kid. The woman starts screaming for a manager, and in the end, to de-escalate things, the manager actually takes a written complaint against me. The woman said to my manager that since I was at the museum, I was still representing this store, which happens to be a well-known shoe store, as I had my uniform on. She then said it makes the employees look bad that I was so disrespectful towards her. She did leave after making the complaint, but not before asking me if I learned my lesson. She literally gave me the biggest smile thinking she won. Thank goodness my manager tore up the complaint after, and she told me not to worry about it. Guys, what Opie went through was infuriating to say the least, and what a nutso Karen, right? Like stalking someone to their workplace and making a complaint like that. Like, get a life, lady. I often go to the pool maybe once or twice a week to stay in shape and to relax. I went there last Saturday evening. Now, the pool I go to has 2 different pools. One side is a fun side, with slides, bubbles, things like that. And the other side is a real pool where people swim in lanes and all that stuff. Also, on the real side, there's 2 sides. One for experienced swimmers that's pretty deep, and one for people who are learning that's pretty shallow. It's a well-known rule that people who can't really swim well don't go in the deep part. And you don't stop or play in there. It's meant for serious swimming. With that said, I was swimming in the deep part. I was doing backstroke when I feel my hand hit something. I turn around and I see a young kid who's around 6 or 7 years old. I told him he shouldn't be there because people were going pretty fast, and he could get hurt by other swimmers. While I was talking to him, I noticed that he wasn't swimming very well. He was doing weird movements, and he was barely keeping his head above the water. So I get him out of the pool and helped him look for his mom. We find her just sitting on the chairs on the side, looking at her phone. And I tell her that it's pretty dangerous for her kid to be in the deep end of the pool when he doesn't know how to swim well and he could get hit by other swimmers. The woman looks up clearly annoyed and she says to me, "It's okay, he's just a kid." I told her I wasn't upset at him, I was just concerned for his safety. She then told me if I was really concerned for his safety, I would have taught him how to swim instead of making him get out, that it would be safer for him if I taught him. I just tell her that wasn't my role, but then she starts saying it wasn't very nice of me and that I should help a kid when I see he's in distress. I told her I wouldn't because 1, I don't work here and I'm not qualified to teach kids how to swim. 2, it's a huge liability and I don't want to be responsible for this boy's life. And 3, I don't get paid to do this and I'm here to swim. Well, that didn't go too well. She starts telling me that I'm being selfish for not wanting to volunteer my time to help her son, that I should be happy to help other people, and there's less and less good-hearted people nowadays. She was literally trying to guilt me into doing this. I of course said no again, and she looked at me and she said, "I can't believe you," all the while shaking her head at me. So I just said to her, "Well, I can't believe this either. You're expecting a complete stranger to babysit your child who can't swim while you're just sitting here scrolling Facebook on your phone." She gave me the dirtiest look ever and then scoffed at me while I walked away. I kept an eye on her and she took her son to the fun side of the pool. This happened a few months ago, and it's more of an I don't work here right now situation. This happened while I was working my lifeguard job at my local rec center. Another thing to note is I'm also a swim instructor, but not at the time. Swim lessons were going on at the time, and for some context, I'm an 18-year-old girl who looks as non-intimidating as possible. I have no tattoos, no piercings beside my ears, very plain style. My coworker and swim instructor, Jackson, on the other hand, is the opposite. The guy's in his early 20s, big guy, beard, multiple tattoos on his arms. The guy looks intimidating at first glance, but he's honestly one of the best instructors we have. Kids usually love him once they start working with him. On to the story. So the lessons are starting, and one of the kids is a quiet 5-year-old girl who I'll call Beth for simplicity's sake. They start the lesson, everything seems normal. I was just sitting on my chair watching the kiddos when I heard someone loudly clearing their throat behind me. I turn around and it's Beth's grandma. She's standing there, arms crossed, staring past me towards Jackson. She then says to me, "You people need to be a lot more careful about who you hire, you know." Honestly, I had no idea what she meant. So I said, "Sorry, what do you mean?" She then points straight at Jackson across the pool and she says, "That guy, look at him. I'm not comfortable with this big tattooed man teaching my granddaughter. What if he's only teaching the kids because he's..." Now, I tried to stay polite. I stop her right there and I say, "I do understand the concern, but honestly, he's one of our most experienced instructors. He's really good with kids." The woman just snorted like I told the dumbest joke imaginable, and she says to me, "Yeah, right, look at him. He looks like he just walked out of prison, darling." Hearing her say that, I was annoyed, but I kept my voice calm. I say to her, "Ma'am, I don't control the schedule or the hiring at this place. I'm a lifeguard. If you have concerns, you can talk to the supervisor in the office. Now, if you'll excuse me, I really need to keep from being distracted from my job." Instead of leaving, the woman leans closer and she lowers her voice at me and she says, "No, you're fixing this right now. I don't want that man touching my granddaughter." I just tell her we can't change instructors mid-lesson, I'm sorry, but... She then suddenly grabs my arm, not super hard, but definitely not okay. She pointed me towards the pool and she says, "Then you teach her. You're a girl. A guy like him has no business being around kids of this age." I immediately pull my arm away and I say to her, "You can't grab me like that. I'm not working as a swim instructor right now. I'm a lifeguard." And this is when she completely lost it. She starts raising her voice so everyone in the pool could hear. She screams and says, "So you're telling me that you're just gonna leave my 5-year-old granddaughter alone with that guy?" She said that while Jackson and Beth were literally practicing floating 5 feet away. I said again that if she had a problem, she needs to speak to management. She just ignores me and she marches straight over to Jackson's lane, and at this point, the whole deck was watching. She screams at him and says, "Get away from my granddaughter." Jackson, of course, looks completely confused. Karen goes on and says, "You're done. You're not touching her anymore." Jackson tried to calmly explain that Beth had been doing great. They're just practicing the basics. But Karen wasn't having it. She then yanks Beth out of the water and she kept screaming how we hire criminals in this place and how she wasn't letting some thug teach her granddaughter. With all the yelling, the manager comes out from the office. The manager obviously tells Karen she needs to leave immediately. But instead of calming down, she pushes him and she starts shouting that she's going to report this entire facility and that she wasn't leaving until Jackson was fired. The manager calmly said, "Actually, we'll call the police." And she just said she would wait for the cops. About 10 minutes later, 2 police officers show up. They talk to the manager and everyone there to get the story. Several parents had also seen her push the manager, so there wasn't really much argument about what happened. The officers end up escorting her out of the building, not in handcuffs though, as the manager didn't press any charges or anything, just wanted her gone. As far as I know, she got banned from the facility. The irony is that Beth herself had been perfectly happy the entire time, so apparently the only one scared of tattooed swim instructors was her overprotective grandma. Yeah, I think Karen totally overreacted with the whole thing. Like, was it fair to make assumptions about that man based on what he looked like? Of course not. But at the same time, some grandparents can be super protective of their grandkids, so I do get it. That said, guys, imagine Grandma Karen having to explain that one to Beth's parents. So guess what happened today? You're gonna have to find a new place for Beth to swim at because, surprise, we're now banned from that facility. This one happened years ago. It's also a long story, but I promise, the key points of this story are truthful. I work in a unicorn position in my recognizable company that I will not name. Due to my unicorn position, I get huge latitude in how I work, and one of the first things I did is to remove myself from the office, relying on tech to work with the people I need to. As a result of this, I'm not very recognizable in the halls, and since I mainly work with the executives and the board, I'm really only known by upper management and the longtime employees there. In summary, if you worked at my company, you either don't know who I am at all, or you're a long-timer and you have a lot of stories about me. With that out of the way, I had a wedding coming up, and to keep it vague without specifics, I tried leveraging as much as possible the assets my company has that could help me out, and they were awesome about it. But using a fairly business-oriented space to throw a wedding required a lot of shoehorning on my part, so I took some time off to make sure I was on the ground, to make sure it executes properly. This entailed me moving many hundreds of pounds of bottled water, booze, mix, and furniture from one office to another by myself with an awesome manual lift. We have 3 buildings situated in a sort of an L shape, so to get from one building to another, you have to cross the street. That all said, it's a hot, sweaty day, and I've been moving several loads of stuff. And since it involved me going into my office, I can't get away with a tank top and shorts. So I'm wearing a blue golf shirt with the company logo the same color as the shirt on one sleeve. Scenario painted. Cue me waiting at the street corner on my 6th load of 300 pounds. While I'm trying my best to politely vape, I'm approached by an instantly aggravated woman. Let's refer to her as Karen. The woman gets my attention saying, "Excuse me, you there, man, you shouldn't be vaping when you're working." I reply, "Okay, thank you." She says to me, "Stop vaping right now. You're doing a simple job. You can wait until you're on break to smoke." Now, I thought the smoke was getting in her face, so I said, "I'm sorry, is it bothering you? You're upwind and the light's going to change in a moment." She then says to me, "You are so rude. Being upwind doesn't matter. You're being very disrespectful to your employer. You're lucky to have a job." I just say to her, "Thank you. I'll let them know your feedback." She then says to me, "Who do you work for?" I respond, I'm not telling you that. Just know that I'm moving some stuff for myself. The lights changed. Have a good day. She keeps pressing on though, and she says to me, tell me what company you work for. As soon as I start pushing, she jumps in front of me as I'm easing the load onto the downward slope transition from the sidewalk to the road. I have to haul on it to prevent it from going down the slope and coming in contact with her, or worse, crushing her foot. Luckily, some random well-dressed young man also jumped in to help me brake the cart, and he looks at her and says, get the F out of the way, crazy. This thing's heavy. Let the delivery guy do his job. The lady, now realizing that she nearly got herself hurt, moves out of the way, and I proceed to move as quickly as I can across the street. And this is the part where it should have ended, but this woman chooses to double down. She screams at me and says, how dare you? You nearly hit me with your cart. If you don't tell me where you work, I will follow you to your customer. I just respond to her and I say, how about you just go on with your day? You didn't get hurt or anything, so let it go. It's also worth noting that I'm about 2 minutes from my office at this point. She just keeps going on though, and she says, I can't believe what an awful worker you are. You've sworn at me, you've knocked me down with your cart, and you were rude to the other guy. All of which are lies, of course. She goes on for a while huffing and puffing. I enter the building, and then she realizes where I'm going. She says to me, oh, I hope you're going to this company. That's where I work. I'm going to be speaking to the purchaser about this, and we won't be buying from you again, and I'm gonna have you fired. Now, the problem with my anonymity is that I don't know who she is either, but I know that it's very unlikely she outranks me. The front desk security who's been helping me all day is there. He's a chill young dude, and I give him a silent shush as I walk in. He smiles and complies. Meanwhile, Karen screams at him saying, I demand to know what company this man works for. Don't let him into this company. The security guard says, I'm not sure, ma'am, but I can probably pull it up from the invoice. What's your name? Karen gives him her name, and I say, I think you should probably look up who she works for as well. She then looks sideways at me, and the security guard says she works for Malcolm. And I'm thinking, sweet, she works for a person, under a person, under a person that I work with, and that I've known for a long time. I then say, Mr. Security Guard, can you please call the facility manager for this building? This load is for her. The facility manager arrives, and I unfortunately don't get to fill her in before arrival, or give a quick cue. As soon as Karen sees her, she says, this man is so rude, and starts telling the whole story. The security guard and the facility manager are completely engrossed and trying not to look at me and laugh as she's telling the story. I'm making various agreeing head nods with a smirky smile. I apparently did hit her in this version. I swore at her multiple times and I called her the C word. I just leave and continue with what I'm doing. The facility manager gets Karen to write down her statement that she needs to give the delivery company to get me fired. Upon returning, they're still there, and Karen turns to me as I come back from unloading the stuff for my wedding. She says to me, what do you have to say for yourself? I respond, nothing. I'm going back for my other loads. This is when the facility manager says, you really don't know him? Karen says, what? She then says, he works here, look at his shirt. Now that I'm on the opposite side of her, Karen sees the logo. Of course, she triples down. She then says, well, this is totally inexcusable. A representative of our company should not act this way. He's totally gonna get fired when I speak to my management. She then name drops her executive member, which would be very impressive if she had actually met him. I just say out loud to her, I was thinking the same thing. I let the moment land and she's clearly confused. She gets a concerned look on her face and she leaves, storming off. Meanwhile, we all laugh and then try to figure out who she actually is. Turns out, she's been with this company for like 5 months and she's an entry-level financial analyst. The facility manager says to me, "Oh no, you're not actually going to fire her, are you?" I respond, "Of course not. I don't know anything about her or her performance, but I do have a play. It'll take me a few weeks to execute it though, with the wedding and such." So fast forward a bit. I get married and go on my honeymoon, and then I'm back in the office. I chat with the guy I know, who happens to be her boss's boss's boss. He asks for a meeting between the three of us, and since I've been gone, photos and stories of my wedding have circulated around, and at this point, Karen knows exactly who I am now. The day of the meeting, her boss's boss's boss says, "Have you met OP?" Karen responds, "Oh yes, I have. I've worked with such and such people, and I use many of the systems he's implemented. By the way, congratulations on your recent marriage. I hear it was a lovely time, and all the executives were there. What a lovely turnout." I say to her, "I appreciate that, but let's move on to this matter. I've already spoken to your boss's boss's boss about your attitude towards delivery people, and we're concerned that you don't respect the people that work very hard to keep this place well supplied and running." Karen says to me, "Oh, but I do. I'm sorry, I was just having a really bad day, and I kind of lost it on you." I'll admit, there was no excuse. I say to her, "I was hoping that was the case. I'm so sorry you were having a bad day. Your boss speaks very highly of you and says you're doing really good work for us, but we can't really let this slide. As you put it, a representative of our company can't behave this way." Karen says, "Oh, I understand. Please allow me at this time to formally apologize." Her boss's boss's boss then says, "That's great. I know OP appreciates the apology and understands it was a lapse in your regular character. We've actually been talking, and we think you could really help us out with an issue that exists, and also allows you to see a more thorough understanding of our enterprise." Karen says, "Oh yes, of course, I'm happy to help." He then says, "That's great. So that said, OP's offered to show you what your new tasks will entail. But unfortunately, the time we need you to do that will mainly be your lunch hour, and when you're done work for about an extra 30 minutes. This would be volunteer only, of course." Karen says, "Yes, of course, I accept." I then say, "Great. So our mailroom is understaffed at the moment, but we realize we can keep them doing their regular duties as long as we have someone moving the flavoring for the soda streams from the loading dock to the cafeteria floor. We can't have delivery people do this, of course, since our building's very serious about security, so we need a trusted employee to do this. Thank you so much for helping us out. We'll make sure your dedication to keeping this building running, in addition to your financial analyst work, which we understand is excellent, is well known. If you have any questions, please ask the manager of our mailroom. He's fantastic at his job." She accepted the task, and she did it for a while before we put an end to it. So the takeaway here is, regardless of a person's job, if they do good work, praise it. And at worst, never berate someone for doing their job if they're actually doing it. And to think, this all started because she couldn't keep her thoughts to herself, guys. Like, why does it matter when a delivery guy who has nothing to do with you, Karen, vapes while on the job? But yeah, what a huge mistake on Karen's part. Berating someone who you think is a lowly worker only to find out they're in one of the highest positions in the company. That is a big oof. That said though, there are some who have mixed feelings about this. Some people say that Karen totally deserved it and way to go OP. But some are commenting that what OP did was super unnecessary and they were actually better off firing Karen. Guys, let me know what you think though. OP did say it was a volunteer position, and Karen did volunteer for it. But yeah, did OP cross the line, or did they deliver just the right amount of pettiness? And that, my friends, brings us to another end of r/IDontWorkHereLady. Guys, I hope you enjoyed today's stories. If you did, hit that thumbs up. And if you're not subscribed, consider subscribing so you don't miss these crazy stories. And if you missed yesterday's episode on the channel, it's an r/entitled People episode, where Psycho Karen teachers are tormenting students, and it doesn't end well for them. It's such a wild episode, so go check it out if you haven't, and myself and Stevie Boy will see you guys in the next one. We love you.